You'll turn on the mic.
Okay.
Good afternoon, council and staff and others in the chamber. It's 2 o'clock or just past it, so we'll bring this meeting to order, and I'll start with a territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we are broadcasting from today, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. And just a really brief moment of reflection that at sunset today of April 17th marks the Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is called Yom HaShoah in Hebrew. And this is observed as the day of commemoration for the approximately 6 million Jews and 5 million others, particularly Polish citizens, who perished in the Holocaust as a result of the actions carried out by Nazi Germany and its accomplices, and for the Jewish resistance in that period. And in Poland, the sunset of April 17th marks the anniversary of the first Warsaw Ghetto uprising, in which Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto fought from the evening of April 17th until beginning of May before they were overcome. So just a notice as well for council and members of the public. We do have a late starter report. It's a last staff report that was just added, so we will deal with that at the end of the agenda today. So just want to make sure we have a note of that. And so we'll start with the disclosure of pecuniary interest. Does anyone on council have a disclosure? Anything to disclose? Seeing none. We'll go to approval of the minutes. I need a mover and a seconder for the approval of the March 20th council meeting. Councillor Wright approving, Councillor Roach seconding. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. So the next item on the agenda are the staff reports, and the facility accessibility audits is the first staff report prepared by Amy Ross and Svate, I apologize, Vicaria. And we'll turn this over to, is Amy here? I think Amy's leading the presentation today. Or all three of you, Amy, Svate, and Kevin. Welcome to Chambers again. Thank you for preparing this report and presentation, and we'll turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Swati Vekaria. I am a senior project coordinator with Facility Design and Management Service team. Today, I and Amy Rose are present here to provide update on accessibility audits that were performed at 17 city facilities. As per AODA Act 2005, municipalities are required to develop a multi-year multi-year accessibility upgrade plan, and under which FDMS team engaged Designable Environment to develop a multi-year accessibility plan. Designable Environment prepared audit checklist and performed accessibility audits where they categorized the accessibility deficiencies into 4 priorities, where priority 1 includes some of the upgrades that needs to be done to meet the minimum accessibility requirements. Priority 2 involves the accessibility requirements which has low to minimum cost involved with it. Priority 3 elements includes the accessibility requirements that has that involves significant alterations and construction cost. Priority 4 identifies the accessibility requirements which cannot be practically upgraded. The audit results indicated what upgrades are needed, and then to get the facilities to meet the minimum accessibility standards, the estimated cost is associated with all the requirements is about $20 million across the priorities. Here, following slide shows some of the examples that accessibility upgrades needed at every facilities. For example, L-shaped grab bars and universal washrooms, barrier-free path across the facilities, barrier-free exits and entrances, barrier-free exterior routes, exterior stairs, and then ramps. Um, a- Accessible change rooms and accessible washrooms, automatic door openers, and some of the interior stairs as well, and accessible parking spots, a requirement of accessible parking spots. Now I would like to invite Amy to provide some information on next steps. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. So a quick recap that in 2023, Council approved 2.95 million over 10 years for the AODA fund, and also a new permanent construction supervisor or coordinator role, for which hiring is currently underway. Following that, staff reviewed the highest priority elements from the reports from Designable and estimated that 10.5 million is needed for some of the things that Swati was speaking about. So parking, life safety, exterior routes, stairs and ramps, entrances and exits, doors, interior routes, stairs and ramps, multi-stalled washrooms, change rooms, and universal washrooms, and then signage and wayfinding. And so to give you a little bit of context, if we're talking about something like a universal washroom, we're talking about $100,000 as a starting point to do a project like that, and then working our way up based on the specs of what the space is like. So if it's a space like the Button Factory that has some heritage designations and some other pieces with it, it will cost more than it would to put it in maybe in City Hall. And then for the next portion for this year, it's the plan that myself and Kevin would work on prioritizing the remainder of the work that needs to happen and review that with the GRAC Built Environment Subcommittee to make sure that the priorities align with their priorities. And then in 2024 to 2026 budget process, we would be seeking to increase the AODA fund to 6 million over 10 years and request a new permanent implementation role or a trades or laborer to do more of that work. As it is, it's very costly to be competing with other organizations that have some similar priorities to do upgrades and be competing for the time and perhaps the lack of resources in terms of people to do that implementation work. We would continue to apply for grant funding to help top up that in-between portion between the 10.5 million and the 20 million that we're looking for. And then broader term, Kevin and I would be looking at establishing an interdepartmental team to put together priorities for upgrades for the 10-year forecast and review that with folks at GRAC for the Built Environment Subcommittee, and then come here, hopefully, for annual progress reporting. Are there any questions?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize that was the end of your presentation. Thank you very much to you both for that information. So we'll turn it over to council for questions. Councillor Rowe.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you both for your presentation. Amy, I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit on the tradesperson role that you had mentioned, and I'm wondering in terms of like what the benefits would be to the city to have that person in-house as opposed to contracting someone in, and what that could look like across the city facilities.
So in terms of if we did get approval for the 6 million over 10 years, that's $600,000 a year. If we put in a couple of universal washrooms, there might be opportunities to pair that with existing construction projects, but there might not be as well, right? And so if we had someone on staff that could do some of the work to install automatic door openers, there wouldn't be a delay, right? We wouldn't be backlogged if there were labor shortages, because there aren't a lot of companies that specialize in that. We wouldn't be paying additional fees or specialized fees for people that do that work. And we would also hopefully have some of that equipment on hand where we could activate it right away.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question. I'm also wondering about consistency in terms of implementing what is required into the facility. So if you have someone on staff, would there then be a set of standards that they would follow in all facilities?
That's the hope. In the report, we alluded to that we're going to work jointly with the City of Kitchener and hopefully the other area municipalities to develop a set of interior standards. But having the people that are on the ground right there to monitor that is really important so that they understand what the goals of GREC are and be able to apply that in real time.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. And over to Councillor Hamner.
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Comment and a couple of questions. Questions to Amy and Swata. Thank you very much for the presentation. I always enjoy reading through and seeing where we're at with all the things that we have before us. And it brings to mind the importance of the decision we made as part of the 2023 budget to allocate the construction supervisor project. So hopefully on projects going forward, we won't have some of these changes that we need to be making right now, that it can help us a little bit along those ways. I was curious that we didn't have anything identified as priority 4. And at first when I saw that, I thought, oh, that makes us a little hopeless on that front. But then on the other hand, I was excited that it was the 3 priorities, 1, 2, and 3, something that we could do something about. I'm curious though, for the next year, what are the things that we will be focusing on? I'm not sure if we've listed them sort of in a priority area. So is it McCormick, is it Bechtel, or is there a plan of what's going to come first and what should we be expecting over the next year?
Through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Hanmer. Yeah, it's a good question. And I think from our perspective, there's a number of priorities, as we noted in this report here. And so I think what we're trying to do generally is align this work with where there are opportunities with ongoing construction work as well. So I think one of the big projects upcoming will be at the Albert McCormick Community Centre and the work that we're doing there. And so we're already looking at the design of a new universal washroom there, as well as a range of other accessibility upgrades. So I think having this funding available is really great from that perspective, because we can supplement that project while the general contractor is there, while we have architects hired, and really make this funding go as far as possible. I just wanted to highlight too some of the really good work that has been done over the last several years as well on this front, and sort of give an indication of where we're going. A new elevator was constructed at the Button Factory. 8 new universal washrooms were built at various sites, including 3 new barrier-free ones, as well as 13 new gender-neutral washrooms. That was all done over the last couple of years, primarily through the WMRC and the Eastside Library projects. And I think there's more work to do at some of these older facilities as well to continue that momentum, building more accessible washrooms generally. So that'll be a big theme going forward. But then, as Amy can speak to her, Swati, they were heavily involved in the accessibility audits. There's a range of other things from doors that aren't accessible, paths of travel that aren't accessible, audible and visual fire alarms, for example, that are really key as well. So there's a range of day-to-day stuff that also needs to happen in addition to those new capital builds like washrooms.
Great, thank you for that. And through you, just one follow-on. I did have the privilege on behalf of council as a member of GRAC to do, it was unfortunately just the last audit that they did, but it was quite something to see in facilities that we had just been doing some renovations. There still were opportunities for improvement. So I think the projects that we've got listed should help move us forward a bit. I guess, Kevin, from your response to my question, we should probably then keep in mind the 17 different items that are making up the $20 million, that we could hear reports and updates on various times, not in any sequential order, because it's going to, which makes a lot of sense that we do it when we're already there doing some construction. Okay. No, I think you've laid it out very well. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor. Over to Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McCabe. I'm I'm curious from a financial perspective and a financial planning perspective. I know it harkens back to some of the discussions that we've had around tying in our greenhouse gas emissions goals into asset management planning and how that's going to be worked and looked at going forward. Is there any have there been any discussions about incorporating some of the shortfalls from a funding perspective here into asset management planning so that it's providing that extra layer of accountability and visibility to the financial piece?
Yes, to you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Bodley. It's a great question, and definitely whenever we get reports like this that outline specific requirements from an asset management perspective, our general practice is to get that built into the DSS system at the city. So that's something definitely staff will follow up on now that we have a comprehensive report done here. One of the other things I will say too, and Amy sort of alluded to this, but you'll note that in the package here, we're talking about a $6 million investment over 10 years versus a $20 million need. So there's still a significant gap there. One of the strategies that we've been successful at the last couple of years and will continue to pursue aggressively is the application for grants. So there were some large scale grants that were put in a few months ago. I think we're at council talking about some of those. And if we're successful, basically that would take care of the priority 1 and 2 items at those facilities, being Rim Park, AMCC, and Moses Springer. So I think as part of a long-term strategy to close that infrastructure deficit, definitely grants is a big piece. But what staff are trying to do here basically is to come up with sort of a baseline level of funding that is reasonable. And I think at about $600,000 per year, which is what the report speaks to, that's a good amount of money to make a real difference here. Not everything, but certainly some of the higher priority items. So, but to your specific question, absolutely, that's something we'll take away and make sure that's reflected in the asset management work.
Other questions from council? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I'm just curious to whether some of these needs end up being identified in our municipal services satisfaction survey, in terms of the services that we're offering to people who have different accessibility needs.
There may be portions of it that appear there. I think we've tried to take the approach in what we've reported here that first we want to be able to make sure that everyone can access a building. So access and egress is really important, getting in and out. And then once you're in there, are you safe in that space? And then once you're safe in the space, can you participate in the pieces that are there? So I think it's kind of a layered building approach to that, right? And so ultimately we do want people to be able to access the programs and services in a very universal and accessible way, and it'll take time once we have all of the other pieces in place.
Thank you, Councillor. If no one has any other questions, I'll just a couple questions that I have as well. And thank you again for the report. It is really helpful, as Councillor Hamner said, to have it laid out like this. One of the questions that I had was just around universal design principles. Like, is there a policy we have in place, or do we need a policy, or do we just know that we'll build or retrofit or renovate buildings so that there's like no front stairs and things like that, or ramps instead of stairs? Do we have something in place that speaks to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of new capital construction, there are guidelines that we would refer to, obviously the biggest one being the Ontario Building Code, but GRAC, the Grand River Accessible Advisory Committee, also has guidelines for specific items that they've noted in the past. And so that work, that document has been leveraged on the WMRC and the Eastside Library projects as an example, and incorporated into the design. But I think one of the benefits of having gone through a pretty extensive capital build program here over the last few years is we've really learned additional things collectively that we want to develop as standards for the City of Waterloo going forward. And one of the initiatives I'm really excited about, I think, coming out of all of that work, Amy and I are actually working with our area municipalities and townships on developing a guideline for the interior space that really goes above and beyond the building code. So in some ways, the building code is sort of the minimum standard, but we know there's things over and above that we want in our buildings. And not only that, but we want to provide a level of consistency across all regional buildings where we can, so that a user's experience in one of our buildings is similar, say, at a regional building. And so it's really a collaboration that's just starting, but I think there's a lot of optimism there that we can really develop a really forward-thinking document that provides a level of consistency and sort of goes over and above what the building code per se would require.
Thank you for that. And another question I had was, like, this feels like it's fairly targeted to residents, which is totally fine and fair. I'm just wondering about staff, and if this has taken into account the accessibility needs of like current or future staff, whether there's mobility issues or vision issues or hearing loss, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, as the report states, the focus in some ways, because of the limitations on funding, the focus is on public spaces that, that would be sort of our initial focus, things like providing those universal washrooms. But there are a lot of overlaps with staff spaces as well in executing projects like that. But generally our approach is, we try to create accessible spaces, even for our own staff as well. And so that's been the general philosophy in FDMS for some time. But I think, if we do have to prioritize projects, whether it's an internal or external space, is something that Amy and I are looking at and may have to make some decisions about collectively. But generally, we try to accommodate all of those needs, whether it's a staff or a public space.
Yeah, I guess I understand that. I'm just thinking that, staff are often, of course, interacting in the public spaces. Like, that's where they do their work. So just being mindful of staff needs within our public spaces, as well as residents' needs, which are, equally important. So, and yeah, so I also was just wondering about like some of the accessibility things you've mentioned that have fixed, but I was wondering about places like the counters at like the box office at the rec center, or some of the customer service areas, and I don't know, water refilling stations and things like that. Like, are there accessible? Are those accessible, or are we building that into it as well? Or is there a lot of retrofits to do with areas like that beyond washrooms and things like that?
Absolutely, yeah. If there's something you want to add, Amy, after, please feel free to as well. But generally, service counters, as you know, are a known problem area. And so those are, if you look at the design at the new community pavilion as an example, or at the new WMRC aquatic desk, providing accessible desks is something that's been considered both from a staff and a public standpoint, as well as things about hearing issues through partitions and stuff like that, making sure they're operable so they can be opened up if there's a need to. But I would say that there are other service desk locations that would need to be retrofitted for sure, and that would be part of this work.
Okay, thank you. I think those are important spaces as well, obviously, in addition to the ones that you've noted.
And those will be caught in the work that we're doing to do that interior design guideline, where we come up with what the consistent practice is and make it apply before we start doing the work separately from that. And I think Councillor Hammer might tell you, like, one of the things that we talked about a lot was washrooms when we went on the audit tour. And something that is never the same in any of the washrooms is where the soap dispenser is located. So we've come up with a standard that we know that works, and so that has been applied and modified for several buildings to make sure that we're already starting to meet some of those practices for the easy wins, right? Those things are very easy for staff internally to kind of shift the position of to make sure it's working. Some of the other pieces are not.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions of council? Seeing none. Thank you very much for the report and the discussion, council. So I need a mover and a seconder to approve the report. Councillor Hamner moving and Councillor Rowe seconding. All in favor? That is unanimous. And sorry, was that for 1 and 2, or did I need to take those? Sorry, I should have asked if I need to. Okay, we'll just consider those are gone together. So thank you very much, Amy Spate and Kevin. So the next we have, the next report is the Parkview Crematorium Edition with a request for additional funding. That is Swate again. You are up to do a presentation on that, and we do have a delegate. Oh, there's no presentation. Sorry, there's no presentation. Okay.
You go ahead.
But we should do the delegate. Yeah. So there's no presentation, so is Henry Schmidt here? Yeah, okay, then we'll start with the delegation.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Schmidt.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and you have, because he was a late registrant, he has 5 minutes to delegate, so we will go ahead when you're ready.
I'm not here to oppose the council and staff's intent to approve the request for additional funding for a Parkview crematorium addition. I'm here to encourage council and staff to look ahead and consider alternatives or options to our now standard cremation and burial practices. Cremation and burial in coffins and concrete vaults are both not environmentally friendly. Cremation uses as much fossil fuel per body as a 500-mile car trip, with concomitant releasant of air pollutants and fine particulate matter. Traditional burials may be even worse from an environmental perspective. It's estimated that in the US, the conventional casket burials annually use 3 million liters of embalming fluid, 30 million board feet of hardwoods, 2,700 tons of copper and bronze, over 104,000 tons of steel, and 1.6 tons of reinforced concrete. I applaud Parkview for the green burial section, which supports its vision to be an environmentally friendly and green option within the region. I encourage Parkview and the city to promote and actively market the green burial as an alternative to cremation or casket burial. I also encourage city staff to investigate a variation on the green burial theme, a vertical burial plot instead of a horizontal one. Cremation and casket burial plots both take up a lot of real estate. A vertical burial plot would permit up to 3 burials in one plot instead of only 1. Australia and New Zealand both have cemeteries with this practice. People choosing a vertical burial are placed in biodegradable shrouds, the green thing, and buried in cylindrical holes feet first. The vertical grave is dug using a rotary auger, a machine used to drill holes for power poles. The hole measures 70 centimeters wide, 3 meters deep. The adoption of vertical burials would provide a significant efficiency in land use, extending the operating lifespan of the cemetery. It's also a low-tech solution and easily adapted. Less conventional and now approved in 6 of the states in the US, most recently New York State, is the practice of human composting. This practice is a natural organic reduction using heat and oxygen to speed up the process that converts bodies into soil. Composting takes the principles of green burial and accelerates the process. However, the downside of this is this method of human composting is relatively capital intensive. A local advocate and champion of this process is Susan Coswan, and she headed up the Good Green, the Good Green Death Project. Another alternative is to the flame creation is cremation, not creation. Cremation is water-based, called aquamation. It's a natural and safe option. Uses the same process that occurs in nature when a body is placed into the ground without a steel casket or a concrete vault. The process combines water flow, temperature, and alkalinity to accelerate the breakdown of organic materials. Desmond Tutu went out that way. Aquamation has no direct emissions of harmful greenhouse gases or mercury and requires no burning of fossil fuels. Aquamation has traditionally been used for the disposition of human bodies donated to medical science. Universities and scientific industry have used this process, also called alkaline hydrolysis technology, for well over 25 years. I understand.
Just to know, you have 1 minute left.
I understand there are currently only 4 operators in Ontario providing this service. It's considered greener than burial because there's no need for embalming fluids or chemicals. It is a longer process than flame-based cremation, but requires less electricity. Though these options of aquamation, of green burials, and human composting may take some getting used to, they're poised to become a method of choice for many who want to lessen their environmental impact, including when they die. In March of 2020, the Ontario government sought public input into both aquamation and human composting, and they reached a conclusion that while many people today choose cremation over traditional burial, consumers have been expressing an increased desire for lower cost services and for newer, greener, and more environmentally friendly forms of disposition. I encourage council and staff to actively study the alternatives to our current practices. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schmidt. I appreciate the information. Council, are there any questions of the delegate? Go ahead, Councillor Basak.
Thanks very much for that. I met with Susan and Commissioner Dykstra early in my last council term before COVID hit about compost burials, and I'm really interested. And I can't recall the whole conversation that we had, but I think there were some hurdles at the province to permit it. So I'm curious, because you cited in 2020 that they expressed interest because there's public interest.
Right.
Did that consultation go anywhere that you know of?
Not that I know of. I mean, it is traditionally a very conservative industry, the whole burial thing. Like people really don't like to talk about death and dying. We're all doing it at the same pace, though. So we'd better get a grip on it. And some of us are closer to the expiry date than others. And that's the reality. But I don't know that it's gone any further than that.
Okay, no, that's really helpful. Thank you very much for your delegation.
All right.
Other questions? Councillor Rowe.
Through you, Mayor, I'm not sure if you can answer this, and I'm just curious from a community gathering perspective. With the green alternatives, what would a funeral service, like in terms of our traditional funeral home, the days long, that kind of thing, how would that affect the community in terms of a green burial, in terms of gathering to mourn?
Well, I think it probably could take a form very much like cremation. I mean, we don't have a body viewing when the body's been cremated. You know, we have this little urn there. Well, it could be an empty urn. And many funerals or services that I've been to recently, they have pictures of the dead person. Videos often showing stuff. So I don't think it'd be anything different, really. I don't see why.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions from council? I have a question. I was curious what you meant when you were saying that there's 6 U.S. states using the human composting.
Yes.
And it's capital intensive. How is it capital intensive? If you could just provide a bit of an explanation on that.
Well, as an example, the very first one in the U.S. was in Oregon. and it's a business now called Recompose. And they've done it all through private funding, looking for investors. And their last, sketch, or not sketch, the last draft of funding was $18 million. So, you know, it is an expensive business to get into, but they've been springing up. So there's tremendous interest. And that 18 million, none of that was government money. That was all private financing, private investment in it. So I can see more cost-effective ways of doing it. You know, the green burial idea. But I sure wouldn't want to diss the human composting. I mean, we've done it for years. The scientific and university community has. So it's not new to us.
Okay, thank you very much. I wasn't aware of that, but interesting information. I don't know if anyone has any questions. No, seeing none. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Schmidt, for coming in and sharing this information with us and giving us some additional information to think about. I appreciate the effort.
My pleasure.
And the information that you know about this sector.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we'll go back to the report that's in front of us and invite staff to return to the podium. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I think Mark would like to make some introduction on this.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Dykstra.
Yep, just to support council in this approval, just the report speaks to the 45-year-old building and the need for the retort replacement. Definitely the operation to date has been void of tax-based funding, and with this approval really see the enterprise model continuing. Just want to reinforce with council that analysis to date on the market relevance here, the existing market, that there is a growing interest in cremation, and we see that growing for the next 10 years as well. And our pre-sales approach too speaks to those who are signing up for that, as we have that in the thousands already. And we believe that we're conservative in our approach with just enabling one retort at this time. And with the approval, the position of a municipal cremation alternative is in alignment with the services that we do provide. We do so in a caring and compassionate way, supporting the community in this service in an affordable manner as well. So just wanted to note that to council in case there was questions around the market approach right now and the need, and just some clarity on the significance of this from our business operation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Dykstra. So we'll turn it over to council, and Councillor Bodley, go ahead.
Thank you. Through your Mayor McCabe. This is actually, notwithstanding the report that we have in front of us, this is a question that emerged from the conversation from the delegate. Can you speak to the marketing? You spoke about the growing need still for cremations, and there's still demand there. Can you speak to the demand for green burials that we've done, and whether that is growing from our perspective, and how that is marketed to potential clients?
Yeah, for sure, through the mayor to Councillor Bodley, a segment in our business, I would say for the last 7 to 10 years that has taken off, and with the expansion that we did at that time, just recognized the need for green burial options. And that was a reality then, and we've planned for it. And we're trying to have those passive areas where, the grass is not mown, etc. And in terms of marketing, it occupies a good portion of our webpage as a consideration for those. So if you want to look at that, it just speaks to how we're encouraging that. And staff can probably share that, there is inquiries on there. Alternatives, we do explore those, and we see that. But the green burials is a growing area, and we'll continue to foster that as we see cemetery needs growing.
Did you have anything to add to that, Sunda?
Yeah, I can add. I think our estimate, as Mark pointed out, it goes our Right now, we are at 1,600 cremation, and that will go at that rate for 2 years, and it might drop a little bit. And our baseline is 1,100, so we will be well above this amount. And retort 1 is a very conservative estimate to go, so we would be able to maintain our reserve balance, and by 5 or 6 years time, I think is on table 2, we will be back around 840,000 reserve. That's based on this projection.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up, Councillor?
And one other point, this is all non-tax based, it's revenue based. So there is, whether it is in or out, there will be no change in the tax dollars.
Okay, thank you, Sunda. And Councillor Hamner.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, and Sunda, thank you. You anticipated one of my questions, and thank you for highlighting that it isn't an impact on our tax base. It's a revenue site. I've got 2 questions, actually, and I'll start with Commissioner Dykstra, because I think that's where it's going to be. Commissioner Dykstra, can you talk a little bit more about the market that we actually serve? You said that the increase is still there for cremations and the numbers are going up. However, our market is not just Waterloo, if I remember correctly from the last reports. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, through the mayor to Councillor Hamner. Yeah, definitely local prepaids are part of that, but regionally too, we have interest in Parkview and that alternative at our location. We do service some out of region, but that has reduced over the past with some broader private alternatives. But supporting, locally a regional need, if there's concerns there through social service or community service at the regional level, we do provide that service, and that's a partnership that we have there as well. So just looking beyond the city, there are needs that we are meeting. So anything add to that? I don't see that, but yes, we'll take the next.
Okay, and then my second question is, in 2019, when we started with the project and gave the initial approval for getting it going, and the request today is to continue that project and complete it. Costs have obviously gone up a little bit around some of it, but what else has changed since 2019 in terms of what else might be available within the community or within the region or within the province even?
Yes, through the mayor to the councillor, about 10 years ago, the bereavement authority enabled privatization of this, and we've seen that market increase over the years, and that's been a consideration for us along this entire journey. So seeing if there's options to work with a third-party vendor. There's cost implications to us running the enterprise. We'd lose that revenue for sure. Then we looked at and understand that, there's some providers that are, outside of the area that are providing services to local funeral homes. We're aware of that, and that is a bit of a market. And as well, other providers, funeral homes are providing their own operations as well. We do see our service as complementary to those and a local alternative in the care that our staff provides and does for those that are bereaving is a continuous process in what I would say from post-funeral service to coming to the cemetery, understanding the options for internment and services such as cremation as part of that. So it's a market that is unique, takes care and compassion, and some of our staff members are here that deliver that on a day-to-day process. And I think, just reiterating, we're well positioned with this cremation option at Parkview to just provide a good service. I think Sunda has a couple of comments as well.
There is a steady deposits in our prepaid deposits, roughly for 3,439, over 3,400 cremation deposits prepaid. So that will remain there regardless of which funeral homes that the funeral is going to take place. It will have to come to City of Waterloo. And roughly right now we are going at over 200 per year of prepaid information. And what I understand is since 1980 till now, over 4,600 prepaid cremation happened at Waterloo.
So our marketing efforts and our promotion efforts, as well as the good and amazing care that our staff provide, is making a difference in the increase in the prepaids that we're having along the way.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just have a couple of questions, and I'm not sure which of you, Commissioner Dykstra or Cinda, who is best enabled to answer that. But so I am concerned with the energy use required for cremation and what that contributes to our corporate emissions at the City of Waterloo. Have we pursued accreditation with the Green Burial Council of North America?
Well, we haven't investigated that option, the greenhouse, but the units that we are going to bring in is going to be much more energy and greenhouse gas efficient than what we have today. And that's one of the reasons why we have been asked to change that one. Over 40 years, the units have been functional. But I don't have the numbers handy for the energy, but I know they are significantly reduced for the one unit that we are going to install.
Mm-hmm. So is there a comprehensive plan for the Parkview Cemetery as a whole to become,
Yes.
Is there a benchmark for sustainability for the cemetery?
There was a master plan done back in 2011 or between 2009 and 10. Our intent this year, and we have been speaking to staff, and our intent is to bring update that master plan again this year. It should come in as one of the line items for consideration to be on capital projects. Yeah.
Okay, and just thinking also about the power supply, like it's usually gas that is used, is my understanding.
That's correct. Yeah.
Are we able to do any sort of heat recovery or even use methane the way there are some cremation facilities that are bullfrog powered?
Those are great questions. And we have a overall citywide greenhouse reduction plan going, and definitely this will be taken into consideration at that time to do that, but not right now. I don't think that we have a plan into this one right now. But other features, may I shift one other point, maybe Kevin and they can elaborate. We have got other features with this building now, that's accessibility, viewing areas for accessible person. So those are new features that's going to come through this building. Kevin, if you'd like to add.
Yeah, thanks, Sandra. So just to elaborate on that a little bit, we did consider the idea of heat recovery early on with this project, but really moved away from it in one reason, because the actual heating requirements for the space are very, very minimal. Actually, you almost don't even need heat in the building at all. But we are putting some minimal electric heat in the building, just in case for any reason the units were taken offline for service in the middle of winter. As an example, you wouldn't be at risk of freezing anything in the building. But generally, we did look at the idea of heat recovery, but moved away from that. Just for some context too on the crematorium. So if you look at it sort of in isolation, it would be the highest building in terms of its greenhouse gas emissions intensity. But when you look at it in an absolute value, it's actually about 7th on the list, and it only accounts for about 4% of the total greenhouse gas emissions across all city facilities. So for context, if you look at, for example, like Rim Park and WMRC, which are the big, ice pads, pools, and those two buildings would be around 45% of the corporation's greenhouse gas emissions. So yes, on an intensity standpoint, they're high consumers or high emitters of greenhouse gas, but in the broad context of the city's facilities, it only represents about 4% of the city's corporate greenhouse gas emissions. So as part of an overall strategy, we do consider all of our buildings, but right now, per some previous council reports, we're really looking to invest at some of these other large recreation facilities, taking that corporate lens to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to meet our objectives.
I have more questions. Is that okay?
Okay, well, no, why don't we hold that and then we'll go to Counselor Vassic, because it's generally sort of one question, one follow-up. But we can come back to you. Go ahead, Counselor Vassic.
Sure, I can wait too. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so I have two questions. One might be it's a more practical question, and one is a bit of a philosophical question, I guess, which it will help me make my decision. Okay, so when somebody comes in and they pay for their funeral, their cremation, so all of the money pays for all the services that they get. But then is there money left over for maintenance of Parkview itself? I'm just thinking we're required to take care of cemeteries legislatively from the province. And so what I'm curious about is to what extent the enterprise reduces our tax base impact. So just what that looks like for an everyday resident to know how the enterprise supports that. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Oh, just put your microphone on, please, Sundit.
Thank you. I think I understood the question. Maybe if I can elaborate, you can tell me. I think presently we are maintaining the building and the premises and the outdoor maintenance are all going based on this crematorium funding because it's a crematorium unit. There is no tax or anything that are supporting to this area, indoor and outdoor. But in case if this is discontinued, there will be a hike on tax because that premises has to be maintained and the building has to be maintained, and they all have to come from tax-based dollars.
Thank you.
Kevin wants to say something.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, and our colleagues in finance can elaborate if needed, but if you refer to table 2 in the council report, you'll see that there's still what I would consider a significant amount of investment in capital projects year over year. And so my understanding is that would go towards things like foundations for monuments, niche spaces, et cetera. So, that's still funded within this analysis, as you see here, without going into a deficit within the reserve. So that funding doesn't just support the retorts, but would support broader investment as well at that site.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that both responses help me. And one more question, and this might be because it's not project specific, but it's maybe for Commissioner Dykstra, which is, we haven't received and we haven't been inundated with emails about this, but I have heard a couple of people with concern that we should be leaving this to the free market. And there are businesses that can do this. And so then it led me to the question of, well, okay, so how do we decide as a municipality what services to provide publicly and what we ought to leave to the market? And then I thought of other examples of what we provide that there's also private examples of. So like we have swimming pools, but there's private swimming clubs, and there's other examples like that. But that's the big one I thought of because, well, obviously they use up so much of our building resources as well. So, yeah, just generally curious, how do we decide what to do publicly, and what do we decide to let go of?
I can.
Yeah, I can start that through the mayor to Councillor Vassic. Similar thoughts have come my way as we've advanced this, and the examples that you've noted on the recreation side, they are extensive, and others may do those in the community. So we try to bring a balance to that and look at affordability. We look at connections to other aspects that we do have. So, for example, like ice, not everybody's in the ice business and providing that, but then our ancillary services benefit a full recreation center, one-stop type of location. And similar with the cemetery, the combination of a crematorium and a cemetery are few. And that's where we can provide a niche and that one-stop service. So that's where we see, in consideration of the market that's out there and those that are in the private business, that they're going to provide a service and we can provide a service. We've looked at where we think there's growth options too, and there's a piece for each of us to provide a need for the community through, whether it's a funeral home, providing that need, all those front end services that we don't provide. They can maybe provide that cremation option. They still are probably coming to us or one of the other local cemeteries. And so we can provide that bridge too. If there's alternatives in the community, we can support others in the community that may not wish to go right to a funeral home and see where that can be as well. We think there's options to grow our business with the unique alignments that we do have. So that's been part of our thinking and thoughts for council as they consider us continuing in this business. And just looking at if the market should change, we've thought about what this space could be used alternatively, so the investment is not misconsidered, or we don't see an opportunity. But this building that is part of this renovation and this improvement could be used for niche space, a future indoor columbarium space, which there is demand for. So I think we're well positioned to carry on and then see where the market goes, and we can update from there.
Thanks very much.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Bassett. Did you have anything to add to that, Sundit? No. Okay.
Thank you.
Did you have a question, Councillor? Okay, we'll go to Councillor Rowe then and come back to you, Councillor Wright.
Through you, Mayor, just a quick question. I'll direct this to you, Kevin. You were talking about the 4% of the greenhouse gases across the city. So Cinda was talking about the more efficient equipment. So would that impact the greenhouse gas, do you expect?
Yes, absolutely. If we can decrease our overall gas consumption, we would see a decrease in the greenhouse gas emissions. So I think without running the numbers here today, I would say too, if we're going from sort of 2 older units to just 1 newer unit, I would also expect to see an immediate decrease in the greenhouse gas emissions, then depending where that goes in the future. But I think right away, it would just stand logical to assume that there would be an immediate decrease in greenhouse gas emissions just as a result of going from 2 to 1 as well as a more efficient unit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe, and we'll return to Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I have 2 business model questions. One is, if we're positioning this as an affordable, more equitable, community-based option, have we pursued sharing the responsibility for this facility with some of our regional partners, like either the adjacent cities or the regional council? Has that been a consideration at all?
Yes, definitely. We haven't thought along that direction, but generally we are open, and even we would like to sort of see the opportunities. We see this one is a collective opportunity, sort of the primary purpose is to serve to the public. So whatever the way that can be done more effectively, we are open to it. Yes.
Commissioner Dykstra would like to add to that.
Yes. Through the mayor to Councillor Wright, over the years being involved with this aspect of the portfolio, that conversation across other cities has been part of consideration. What services can we provide? And yeah, we're still in the business in providing that, and I think that's a good thing for the municipalities across the region, and we can offer that alternative, and they can work directly with us. We do on different aspects. And so, yeah, so that is a good opportunity going forward, and in the past we have done so.
Go ahead, Councillor.
And just a follow-up also. Commissioner Dykstra, you mentioned that if the market conditions were to change, that would potentially impact this enterprise model. What sort of timeline would that be? Considering the investment that we're making now, and we would obviously want to use the retorts, refurbishment of the facility for a certain period of time. So what timeline would that be for, needing to shift the operations model?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Wright, definitely you've heard from Director Sundasiva just where we're at in terms of about 1,600, potentially a decrease in 2 years down to 1,100. And, the vision here, and you see with the forecast, a 10-year forecast, I feel that's the opportunity that's before council with where we're seeing 2% increase year over year in cremations industry-wide. I think until we see that, and maybe a bit of a demographic shift as some of us age and move through that, then at that point there may be some opportunity to just see where we're at in the cremation business, and it might not just be us, but broader. And there may be some new alternatives too, as we've heard tonight. And I think that's that 10-year horizon that we can share with council.
Thank you, Councillor, or thank you, Commissioner. Did you have any other questions, Councillor? No, okay. Anyone else? Any other questions? Most of my questions have already been answered, so thank you very much, Council, for asking those. I just wanted to clarify, just around the cost. Is our service actually the same price, or is it a little bit more than some of the private sector? Because I've heard a couple of different versions on that.
Cost of cremation?
Yes, cost of cremation.
I think that the lowest, the lowest goes between 495 and the highest is 700. We are in the range of 500, 5 or something. So that's a number that we are planning to maintain for the foreseeable future.
So approximately 500, is that what you said? Or
505.
505.
Sorry, 570.
570, okay. Yeah. Do I hear no, I just 570. Okay, so we're kind of in that midpoint range.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. That's helpful. So yeah, no, it's very interesting, and I appreciate the delegate coming in to share that information about green burials. It's new information for me, and I hope that it is something that staff consider to promote and citizens look at as they do their planning, their pre-planning processes, because obviously we know that death is a factor in everyone's life, yes. But and it's a great opportunity to do the pre-planning, but everything we can do to reduce our impact on the environment is important, including in one's passing. So I appreciate if staff continue to look at ways to promote that option as well. So thank you very much for this information. And if seeing no further questions, so I will look for a mover and a seconder to for both of the recommendations here, that council approve the report and that council approve additional funding of $850,000 from the Cemetery Reserve Fund to continue with the building upgrades and for the replacement of the existing retort at Parkview Crematorium. Moved by Councillor Vasic, seconded by Councillor Hamner. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, Council. Thank you, staff. And thank you again to the delegate for speaking to us today. So the next on the agenda is the 2022-2023 capital update report. And I don't believe there's a presentation for that. We have Marcel Emily with us today. Council, are there questions on this report? Okay, Councillor Vasic, go ahead.
Thanks through you, Mayor McCabe. Thanks, Emily, for your report in the packet. I was curious a little bit more about how intensive it was on staff time, because this year to date, grants were we've applied for substantially more money, which is great, especially in the area of green initiatives. So I was curious what the impact of that increase in workload was on staff.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Marcel Humelniku. I know I've introduced myself to council before. I'd like to do so just one more time for your benefit. My name is Emily, and my pronouns today are she and her. I'm bigender, male and female, so some days I am Marcel, pronouns he and him. With me in general, you may default to Marcel, he and him, and on those days that I'm Emily, I will let you know, like today. Thank you so much. So through you, Mayor, to the councillor, that's a very good question, and I will note that the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings grant was a very intensive application because there's a lot at stake. This is the grant and a wonderful opportunity that impacts the entire community. So the grant team put a lot of effort into making sure that our application was as strong as possible. I will note that it wasn't like it wasn't 10 times as much effort as like the dollar amount from last year, but it was quite a bit of effort, and it is important to be cognizant of those things because there are a few more grants coming down the pipeline, like Section 7 and Section 8 indicate, and we've already assembled the cross-functional teams for those as well. And so there will be a lot of staff time devoted to this, but it is also very much aligned with council and community priorities, so we will continue to prioritize these as necessary.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Other questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Emily, I just have a quick question. I noted that, like Councillor Vasek had mentioned, that, it looks like there's a 70% success rate in that chart that you provided us. And then really that works out to about 23% of the total funding bucket. So it's a lot of work. Like, I just want to acknowledge that up front. It is a tremendous amount of work to get through these grants. And the bigger they are, the bigger the workload is and the more collaboration required. Are there things that we should be doing in order to access these larger grants? Like, I'm thinking of the DMAF grant coming up, which is the Disaster Mitigation Adaptation Fund, which, they're high competition, federal programs. They're really difficult to get the big money. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that. Thanks.
Absolutely. Through you, Mayor, to the councillor. That's a great question. And I will say that generally the grant teams will ensure that we do what we need to do and involve who we need to involve. And I want to provide to you an example. It's not directly applicable, but since it's right in the report, you will note that in Section 5, we did engage individuals as necessary to request an extension on that grant, and we were successful with that. We generally engage whoever we need to engage to maximize our chances, and I know across the city we are very collaborative in this sense, and sometimes we rely on some of your support as well, very much appreciated. So we are very cognizant of that, and we engage individuals as necessary.
Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Wright? No. Okay. Other questions from council? Just one question for me is, I don't know, maybe it's a comment more than a question, and it may be through you to the commissioner, but is there a role for more advocacy on issues like this in terms of us in order for us to access this funding? Is there more that you would see that myself as mayor, councillors, or that we need to do, or with our local MPs and MPPs need to engage in order to increase our opportunity for success, particularly with these larger funds?
Absolutely. So like I said, we engage you and others as necessary to maximize our advocacy. I did want to see if one of the commissioners wanted to add more to that, like Commissioner Dykstra that you had pointed to. But in general, we approach it in kind of a dynamic sense where there is an opportunity. We engage you and others, and we have meetings in place to accomplish this as necessary. Is there a role for greater advocacy as opportunities dictate? So we are excited to advance these opportunities as much as possible, but I want to see if anyone has more to add.
I can add to this, Mayor. Thank you for your question and for your response, Emily. Yes, I think that greater advocacy certainly has a role in these forums as well through you, Mayor and Council. And so certainly that's something that staff, I think, have been reaching out on with, through AMO, having those conversations, whether it's FCM, depending, of course, on the grant. I think there's lots of great connections that yourselves can assist staff with. And so I think that that's at the forefront. We know that these are very competitive grants. And so part of the equation is having the great staff team collaborating on, wonderful submissions, but also to getting that information in front of the funding agencies to make sure that, they're aware that they are there. So we are very much committed to working with council and doing that. And I also just wanted to just mention one thing quickly, which is this is actually our coordinated grant approach is pretty unique in the region, and it's something that really was born out of the multi-year budget process, where we were able to really hone in on this particular need to have a coordination within the city on grants without adding additional resources. And so this is something that's really worked well for us, and to have that centralized view has been part of the success. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily all of it, but I just wanted to point that out, and thank you to Marcel, Amelie, and Brad and team for doing such a great work over these last few years and securing great funding for the community. But yes, advocacy, absolutely, going forward, that is something that I think we should leverage more and more. So thank you for the questions.
Thank you to you both for the answer. I would say, we certainly appreciate upper levels, the federal and provincial government, in the funding that they have provided and the various programs that they've started. And I'm really pleased that we're well positioned, or at least we hope we're well positioned for the new housing funds, that accelerated housing funds that have come forward, because we have the affordable housing strategy now in place. So that's really great that we have those pieces together. So I think it's incumbent on all of us as elected officials to continue to talk with our colleagues at the region and also at the federal and provincial government whenever we have those chances, and at whatever forums we're at, to remind them of the projects and the outstanding needs that we have, particularly I'll say with the climate change, with the need for reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, and with some of those facility grants that we've requested. So, thank you. I echo other councillors' remarks about we appreciate the work that staff put into these grants and these applications. So we really appreciate it, and we will keep our fingers crossed that we get some good news in the coming future. So thank you so much, Emily. Just checking, there's no further questions? Okay, thank you so much. So I will look for a mover and a seconder to approve the report. Moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Bodley. All in favor? That is unanimously approved. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is the Joint Services Initiatives Committee 2022 update, and this was prepared by Sandy Little when she was the executive officer, and she is presenting with us today in her new role as Director of Strategic Initiatives on her first day. So congratulations for that, and welcome, Sandy. So questions from council about this report. Councillor Hamner.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, congratulations on your new role, Sandy. We're glad to be working with you in it. I read with interest that we've completed 2 projects, but yet as I was reading them, they didn't seem quite complete to me. And specifically the Getting Around app, it looks like Kitchener's put it in place, which is great, but it still seems to be that there's work here. So are we to assume that that's continuing forward for us, or is that more work still to come?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Hamner. It's a really good question. Sometimes when we think of the word completed, we think that the projects are just completely done. And that's not always the case with some of the initiatives through the Joint Services Initiatives Committee. In some cases, we've kind of reached that end point between the 2 municipalities where either we're kind of going separate ways or we're just going in different directions. So you've read correctly that Kitchener has kind of completed things on their end. I might maybe turn this over to Commissioner Ormson just for some further details with regards to this specific project.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Hammer, and thanks, Sandy. We are making progress on this, actually. The automated vehicle locator system, the AVI apparatus, has been put in most fleet vehicles with the help of Tracy Bell and her team. And we're monitoring the work that Kitchener are doing, and Cambridge are also involved in this type of program. We wanted to also expand it to our contract snowblowers. So this was the first winter where almost all of the snow fighting vehicles had them in place, including some of the trackless machines in Commissioner Dykstra's area and parks. So we are getting closer. We have to do a little bit more work with IMTS to make sure that we can stage it properly in the city's website so that there's a user interface that's reliable and it's user friendly. But we expect to get there probably by next winter.
Great, thank you. Then just I guess a follow-on as I appreciate the explanation and thinking going forward with the reports. You've explained what the goal was and where we were fitting, and that wasn't as clear to me. That's all, but the explanation's been great, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bodley.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McCabe. I have a question about the inclusionary zoning piece here. It says that the target completion date is in 2023, and I'm just noting, I guess, that this has been something that we've seen on this report and has been referenced in a whole host of other reports, affordable housing, etc. How confident are we that it is actually going to be 2023? And do we anticipate when to the conversation that was initiated by Councillor Hammer, do we anticipate that when the joint service piece is done, that setting aside the other municipalities, that at least we will be able to move forward as quickly as possible in getting this implemented? Because I think it's really badly needed here in the city, and I'm hoping to get it implemented as quickly as we possibly can.
Sure. Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Bodley. It's a good question in terms of, how sure are we that it's moving forward in 2023? I did receive a bit of an update from Michelle Lee on our growth management team, and it seemed she seemed fairly confident that we are still moving forward. Obviously, we've had to respond to a lot of changes at the provincial level, so that has caused some delays and additional considerations. But as I kind of mentioned before, in terms of having a project completed, we may be moving in different directions or kind of having different timing with respect to that. And even though a project under the Joint Services Initiatives Committee has been identified as being complete, it doesn't mean that the work stops. We continue to collaborate and work with our partners. I know that there's a little bit of some vacancies on Kitchener's side with respect to their work, so I'm not sure how that's going to kind of impact the larger project, but I don't know if Commissioner Ormson has anything else to add with respect to this specific project.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Bodley. All I can really add, councillors, there is a lot of work happening, as Sandy said. Probably the biggest thing is to make sure that everyone's in full understanding of the myriad of planning legislation changes that have happened. We don't believe that there's anything dramatic that would curtail our ability to launch this, but we also want to be very careful that we marry it up with the affordable housing strategy and all the other changes that are happening in the provincial front.
Thank you, Councillor. Other questions? A couple of questions from me then, seeing no others from Councillor. Sorry, so just wanted to clarify if the Getting Around app, does that actually apply to active transportation users, or is it strictly vehicles?
Thank you, Mayor, for the question. It would be for any city winter maintenance vehicles that we could actually equip with that basically GPS-enabled technology. So it would include trackless units that are clearing sidewalks. It would include any smaller vehicles on multi-use trails and those things. So the idea is to have it available to anyone who's interested in winter control. So all modes of transportation, essentially.
Okay, thank you. Can't believe we're talking about snow again, but it was 25 degrees on the weekend. The AMPS, the work that's happening, how does that work with what the work that the region's doing? Is there a crossover there?
To you, Mayor, I might pass this question either off to Commissioner Dykstra or to Nicole Papke. They'd probably be better positioned to kind of answer that question.
Okay, thanks. And I guess particularly I'm thinking of the region has recently decided they're going to add 32 more speed cameras. So I'm just wondering how that collaboration works.
So currently, the speed cameras would still be with the provincial court. They would have to enact their own AMPS bylaw, and I'm sure they would reach out in terms of sharing those resources with us as well.
Okay, thank you. And with respect to the Vision Zero, just to comment that a recent regional road safety report said that last year there was 6,000 collisions across the region. So just to comment that doesn't even include like all the near misses that people experience too. So just to comment that's quite a ways to go to get to Vision Zero. Not that we can't get there with lots of good road design and safety measures and things like that, but that is I think a pretty significant number that we should all be aware of. And so I just also wondered, because there was a list of the various joint committees, and I think you've tried to have a government relations joint committee, and I was just thinking of some of the collective work that Waterloo and particularly the region and Kitchener and Cambridge do. Is there a need, do you think, to have like a joint government relations committee that can like go to the province or the federal government kind of with one voice?
To you, Mayor. So that's a really great question. So the list kind of on page 7, definitely I should highlight, is not an exhaustive list. Obviously, there are probably many more projects and initiatives that we try to work on with the various area municipalities as well as the region. So this is just kind of a quick high level up, kind of a snapshot of some of the key projects. When it comes to government relations, certainly in my past role as executive officer to the CAO and working closely with council and leadership, there's definitely a need to coordinate when it comes to government relations and government advocacy on certain key items, because there's certain things that don't end at our municipal borders, things like homelessness, things like sustainability and climate change. Those challenges don't know our municipal borders. So it's always helpful to have more people at the table and have those louder voices. Even though we don't have a formal committee in place, and there have been attempts made in the past, I would say that the idea of collaboration and alignment still very much exists with our area municipalities and the region. We try to identify our own opportunities that we can continue to work with our partners, things like the upcoming AMO conference in August. Certainly, we have done it on the strategic planning side, and that team has become a little bit more formalized. It can be difficult, especially when there's turnover in certain positions in certain areas. But I would say, currently we're continuing to work with our area municipalities, and if the opportunity arises where we can formalize that work, then certainly we would look to pursue that. But there are going to be opportunities where we as a municipality need to kind of advocate for certain initiatives that are Waterloo specific, and then reach out to our area municipalities in the region whenever there's opportunities for that wider engagement. So it really just kind of depends on the initiative that we're kind of advocating for and moving forward with.
Thank you very much. And just my last question, and I realize you said it's not an exhaustive list, but the green development standards, that's also one that's being, does that fall under this category as well? Because I know those discussions and negotiations are underway.
Yes, so to you, Mayor, it is on the list. It's one of the bullets on there. We do work with the Waterloo Region Community Energy Group, headed by Matthew Day, with regards to that. So looking forward to seeing where that kind of moves forward. I know that work started a few years ago now and led by another partner, but now this seems to be taking off in terms of a little bit more momentum. So just our senior sustainability officer certainly is working closely with WRCE with regards to that work. And so we'll be seeing where and how that moves forward throughout 2023.
Thank you. Apologies, I must have missed that in the report because I did read it, but I obviously missed that point. Any other questions here from staff? Nope. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sandy, for that. It is amazing when you look at it and see 75-ish joint service committees between our two and sometimes 3 or 4 municipalities. So thank you very much for the update. Looking for a motion to approve this. Councillor Hamner and seconded by Councillor Vasek. All in favor. That is unanimously carried. Thank you very much. And so we will move now to the, we have a, as we called it earlier when this meeting started, we have a late starting staff report. It is the ratification of the Waterloo Professional Firefighters Association, the local 791 agreement for 2023 to 2026. I see that we have our HR director, Kathy Wiedhaus, here to answer any questions that council may have. So thank you for the report. And council, do you have any questions? Or Kathy, sorry, did you have anything that you wanted to add to this? Okay, we'll turn it over to the clerk first then.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to note to council that there was one amendment from the version that you have in front of you. So the recommendation concludes with the mayor and clerk being authorized to sign any related documents.
Thank you. Go ahead. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Kathy? No. Okay. Okay. Councillor Wright, did you have your? Oh, I thought he's okay. Councillor Hamner.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Just a quick question, Kathy. Just curious what the turnout was like for the ratification. I recognize it passed, but it'd be nice to know.
I don't have that information. Sorry, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Hamner. I actually don't have those numbers with me right now, but I'm looking over to the president of the WPFFA here
I thought you might be.
If he has any information he can provide.
Yeah, we had a great turnout for the ratification.
Sorry, just a sec. I just think for the to capture it on the YouTube for the recording. Yeah, just come to the mic. Thank you, Adam.
Hello, thank you. We had a great turnout to the ratification. People were eager to see what this contract brought, being the times that we're in right now with inflation and everything going on and the pressures that we and our members feel. We had 100% ratification for this deal.
Great, thank you very, very much.
Any other questions? That is a outstanding number. That really is. I wasn't expecting 100%, but thank you very much. Okay, seeing no questions, should I read this because it is a late starter, just so for the record? Okay, I'll read the recommendation that Corp 2023 to 20. It says 2028 on the version I have. Oh, sorry, dash 028, sorry, okay. Be approved as terms of settlement between the Corporation of the City of Waterloo and the Waterloo Professional Firefighters Association, WPFFA, Local 791, covering the period of January 1st, 2023 to January 31st, 2026, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign any related documents. So looking for a mover, Councillor Hamner, and a seconder, Councillor Roach. All in favor? That is unanimous. And yeah, I would just add a brief comment that, yeah, we appreciate the stability that this agreement, the longer-term agreement brings to both the Professional Firefighters Association and to our administrative team. So thank you to all involved in working on this agreement and ratifying it to 100%. I think that's a really good signal. And yeah, we appreciate all the efforts that went into it and the result. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on then, the consideration of notice of motion at a previous meeting. As they're seeing none. No notices of motions, no correspondence, no communications and correspondence, no unfinished business. Are there any questions, Council? Seeing none, any new business? Yes, Councillor Vasek, and then we'll go to you, Councillor Roach. Pardon? Okay, Councillor Roach, go ahead.
Just wanted to give a shout out to all the hockey players in boys and girls. On the boys' side, we completed this weekend with a number of provincial champions from Waterloo. Just highlighting a couple, the U16 AAA. Those would be the minor majors. Those would be the kids that are going to be, drafted this Friday into the OHL. One of the top players in all of Ontario is here from Waterloo. Brady Martin is his name. And I'd like to congratulate the U10 team who completed their AAA undefeated this year. So that doesn't happen very often. But U10 boys, yeah, undefeated this year.
That is amazing, my goodness. And in addition, we have Caitlin, is it Kramer? Yeah, Caitlin Kramer, who won gold medal at the Worlds. Maybe you could speak to that.
Caitlin Kramer and actually Ava Murphy, who is also a former Raven and on the same team. So yes, this was provincials weekend for both the girls and the boys. And I think all the teams, all the coaches, volunteers, everyone who makes both our associations work in the town, they represent the city of Waterloo very, very well.
Yeah, I echo that. Thank you to both of you, Councillor Roach and Hamner, for mentioning that, because yeah, it is a tremendous amount of time that the coaches and the volunteer coaches and of course the kids and parents and guardians put into it. So congratulations to all involved. Councillor Vasek.
Thanks. There is an Earth Day thrift market happening in Ward 5 at the Lincoln Road Chapel at 145 Lincoln Road, Saturday, April 22nd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And it is in support of for an international student to assist with their fees in peace and conflict studies. So also a thrift event for Earth Day is also a great idea. So it's all very complimentary, peace and conflict studies, Earth Day, thrifting. So come on out to Ward 5 and buy some cute things.
Thank you, Councillor Vasek. I would say there's lots of activities happening in the city, so make sure you check out Create Waterloo and Curated Waterloo or Curated KW, and there's lots of different, the BIA Uptown, they've got a lot of events as well. I just wanted to also note that it's Volunteer Week, or volunteer, it may actually be Volunteer Month, but for us it's Volunteer Week, and just want to make a quick shout out, but a very heartfelt shout out to the numerous, I think it's about 600 volunteers in a variety of capacities that from our residents who volunteer tremendous amount of hours. Even if you volunteer an hour or two, or you volunteer, every day throughout the entire year, everything that people commit to the city and to the program or services or the club or whatever it is, makes a significant amount of difference to the level of service and the level of programs that the city is able to offer our residents. So really wanted to just say, I think on behalf of all of council, a really heartfelt thank you and a sincere appreciation for all of the volunteer efforts they put forward. So thank you very much to all of our volunteers. Okay, so we need, the next item on the agenda is the enactment of the bylaws. So I need a mover and a seconder to enact the bylaws. Looking to Councillor Hamner and seconded by Councillor Wright. And all in favor? That is unanimously approved. And then I need a mover and a seconder for adjournment. Looking at Councillor Rowe and seconded by Councillor Vasic. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon and evening.